Hello and welcome to the next episode of my Alone With Me Opsix series. So far we've spent some time going through all of the major features of the Opsix, all the way from the panel and the basic controls, listening to the operators, and eventually designing FM sounds, non-FM sounds. And we've entered, I think, the final stage of the process, which is trying to make a more complex modulated sound that utilizes more of the features of the synthesizer. So last episode, we started designing a sound, and in that episode, I was really trying to only get us to a basic timbre. And that timbre, we're going to come back this episode and start adding some modulation controls and some expression to that sound. So let's just listen to it. I saved it here. So hopefully what you can hear there is that there are three parts to the sound. There's a lower part, which is using ring mod feedback, which gives us a relatively simple bass tone. Let's look at the algorithm. Let's listen to that in isolation. So quite clean, just filling out the low end. We have a mid tone. And then finally we have our upper tone. So already listening to that, I think that I was a little shy with this mid-tone. So I've just added a little bit more feedback to that. And part of the reason that I was shy with that is I hadn't yet brought in the filter. Now I have the filter and I can hear that it could be a little bit stronger just to add a little bit more punch here. Let's have a quick look at the envelopes. So the first one attacks in 4 seconds. The next one attacks in 3 seconds. And this one, I'm going to put a 2-second attack on it. Even though this has its own attack, I'm going to try and adjust how that comes in a little. And I might try and bring that peak down a little. Okay, so that was just a little tweaking, a little minor reshaping. But the first dimension I would like some expressive control is velocity. Now I already introduced the first of our velocity modulations by making the envelope 2, which is called the filter EG, respond to velocity. So in other words, when the velocity is at effectively 0, there will be no impact on the filter from the EG, so it won't open the filter from this place. So let me press as light as possible. Now let's press as fast as possible. You hear how much brighter that gets. So that's good, I quite like that. But what I'm going to do now is look at the individual operators and I'm going to adjust how velocity controls them. Now I know that the one in the bass is the cleanest of tones, and typically I like more rough textures as the velocity increases. I think it's easier to play that way. So let's start then by giving this a low level of velocity sensitivity, let's say 25. And then let's set the one in the mids to 35, and let's set this one to 50. And then the ones which are modulating this, I set this to 35. I'm going to set those to, let's say, 40 and 45. I'm just coming up with numbers to start with, and that's 50. And let's set this one to be 35. So let's just try it. Light press. quite a clean tone. So let's try and actually play a chord maybe. Okay, I like the way that's sounding, but as I've done in a couple of previous sounds, I feel like when I hit the key harder, not only do I want it to be brighter, but I want it to come in sooner. So that's going to be a modulation of a velocity. If I want to test it, an interesting thing you can do is, I mentioned there's no way of setting a direct modulation that's just a fixed value. I could, I guess, attach the damper pedal and hold that down, but I use the mod wheel, and then when I turn it up, this is what the maximum amount of the modulation is. So adjusting the program attack level down. So this now represents the quickest the attack is going to be. So if I make it velocity sensitive, light, okay, I didn't really look at the speeds of these very carefully, so that's called 0.33. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the others to be comparably sort of similar speeds. So 0.30 and let's say 0.35 or 36 is fine. So now I have 3 LFOs. I'm going to have them all, at least initially, I'm going to set them all to be voice synced. That means that for each voice, when I press a key, the LFO is going to reset. So what I hope that that will do is allow us some consistency, but also control. So I had operator 3 fade in. I think fading in is a pretty good idea. I'll adjust fade-ins as we go. So for now, though, we have access to this LFO1 operator LFO. So what default modulation locations does that have? So it can adjust the pitch. So let's just see what that sounds like. On operator 1, let's route LFO1 to the pitch. This is going to be obviously over the top. Okay, just a subtle motion there, and let's look at the amplitude. So looking at this pitch one, what if I let that go a bit more, but dependent on velocity? So let's have that fade in a bit. What happens if we pick a... I think the triangle works okay. So now we have a little... Okay, so let's go have a look at what else we might want to do. So I have the level of this one negatively modulated by LFO1. Maybe I'll have this upper voice positively. Okay, so now we have versus. So I think I'd like to revisit the sustain levels that we have here. So I think I'd like to differentiate the envelopes on these things a little bit more. I think they may be a little bit too similar. So let's make this one a little bit shorter, bring it down to 1.5 seconds. And let's make this one a little bit longer. Let's bring it up to 6 seconds. Okay, so now I'm listening to that in a lower register. What it's making me think is, let's adjust the balance of the operators in the low register, just so we get the timbre we're a little bit more happy with there. So let's go up. So I'm thinking the lower one can provide a bit more in the high register and a bit less in the low register. Let's listen to the next one. We're in the high. Okay, and now this one. Okay, so still a little bright in the high register, even though these are balanced better. So now what I'm going to do is adjust the amount of filtering in the high and low register. So now the filter's closed a little bit there, and let's go all the way into the bass register. To open a little bit in the bass. So we've got LFO2 here. Let's try bringing some in. Okay. Let's make that a little velocity sensitive as well. I think on average I've got the releases a bit long here, so let's go back and look at the releases. I think it just kind of hangs out a bit. So this is 4, 4. That one's deliberately very long, but I can bring it in anyway. Okay, so let's bring this down to 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Mostly because I'm thinking we're going to be adding some effects to this, which will make it kind of hang out a little bit longer. So now let me revisit the levels of the 3 carriers. So I'm going to bring them all down and I'm going to play. So I would like the filter to have the possibility of opening a little more. So another thing I might do is as the velocity goes up, I might increase the resonance of the filter a little bit to have more of a timbral shift going on. So let's go and let's use the mod wheel to set it. And filter resonance. So played very light. Okay, and I think the last thing we're missing is something moving in this middle operator. So which LFOs have I used? I've used 1 and 2 and 3. Maybe have this one fading in as well. Okay, so what I might try is using all of the LFOs across these 3. So what I'm hoping is that that will give us more timbral movement going on there. To test that out, I'm going to turn off the other 2 parts of the sound and only listen to this one. So I have one adjustment for amplitude here that I can already have, but I'm going to put, let's say, 3, 2, 1. LFO 3, LFO 2, LFO 1. So LFO 1 is going to be here. Let me turn it way up. And then LFO2 and LFO3 I'm going to have to insert manually here. So LFO2 and LFO3 going to apply to LFO3 is going to apply to operator 2. And oops, LFO3, not G3. LFO3 is going to apply to operator 3. So 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to have them adjusting level. Let me just set some arbitrary value, see how it sounds. Okay, I think that's working okay. So let's bring those back in. And I think the last thing I'll do this episode is I'll make the mod wheel do something. And I think what I would like it to do is adjust the relative levels of operators 1 and operator 5. So one's going to go down, one's going to go up. So this one at the moment has more of this bassy one. And maybe less of that. And I'm going to have their roles reverse a little bit as I adjust that. So let's go for that. So mod wheel, destination, operator 1 level, mod wheel to operator 5 level. This one, I'm going to have it go negatively, what's that look like, 40% maybe? And this one can go positively 30%. So let's test that out. It becomes a little bit quieter at that top end. So either I'll bring the volume up or I'll open the filter. So let's just experiment with that. So mod wheel control, destination, program level. I think that was correct, but I think I also want to open the filter a bit. So filter cutoff. Okay, so right, overwrite. So I've saved this, and next episode I'm going to come back and I'm going to try and see if there's anything else I want to do with these last modulation slots, possibly experiment a little on the home page, just fine-tuning the attack and decay, and then adding some effects or other features. And I think that will be the final episode in completing this sound. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you've been enjoying this series. But in any case, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining me and learning about the Opsix and watching this series so far, and goodbye.